The frost came down on the gutter behind Wilkerson's barber shop at 3:15 in the morning. Marcus Holloway watched it form along the rim of the metal drain. He kept his hands inside the sleeves of his coat. It was the last week of February 1992. He had been sleeping on that back step since the second Tuesday in November. 6 months gone, near enough. The cot he had used after his aunt died lasted 3 nights before the woman who owned the rooming house on Looney Avenue decided 18 was old enough to find his own way. Marcus did not argue. Wilma Pruitt had raised him from the year his mother passed. She was a third cousin of his grandmother on a side of the family Marcus had never had the chance to map. She drank coffee from a mug with a chipped handle and never owned a telephone. When she died of a heart attack on the 18th of October, Marcus came home from school and found her on the kitchen linoleum with the radio still playing. Police came, the mortuary came. Nobody asked Marcus where his people were because there had never been anyone to ask. In the inside pocket of his coat he kept a cassette tape wrapped in a piece of plastic from a loaf of bread. The tape was Mahalia Jackson, side 1 only. The plastic kept it from sweating. His mother had owned that cassette, and the spool had 2 bite marks from a pencil where she had held it in her teeth while she rewound it with her finger. Marcus had never played it. He could not say why. He only knew that pressing the button on a borrowed Walkman was a thing he was not ready to do. On the 19th of December, he turned 18. He had remembered it only because the woman at the Salvation Army kitchen on Adams Street had asked him his birth date for a form. He had not told her it was that day. He had eaten the soup and walked out. So when the figure in the long camel coat came up to him in the soup line on the morning of the 23rd of February, Marcus did not run. The figure carried a clipboard. The name Marcus Lee Holloway was typed in capital letters at the top of the form. He thought about it, then he did not. The figure in the camel coat was not a man. She was a woman of 67 with steel gray hair cut short and a leather satchel from a time when satchels still meant something. She introduced herself in a voice that did not raise itself to be heard. Henrietta Vinson, attorney at law, Mississippi Bar, since '78. I have driven 320 miles to find you, son, and I would very much like to sit down. The Salvation Army office on Adams Street was a converted broom closet with 2 chairs and a window that did not open. The director had let them use it for an hour without asking questions. Henrietta Vinson had the kind of face that did not invite questions. Marcus sat across from her. He did not touch the bottled water she slid toward him. "You are Marcus Lee Holloway," she said, "born December 19th, 1973, in Memphis, Tennessee. Mother was Cynthia Holloway. Your father is on the certificate as Otis Jr. Holloway, deceased 89, Chicago. Tell me if any of that is wrong." Marcus said it was right. She nodded, once. From the satchel she produced a brown manila envelope, the kind that closes with a string wrapped around 2 paper buttons. She unwound the string with the patience of a woman who had unwound a great many strings in her life. "I am the executor of a trust," she said. "Set up 1973. Funded over many years. The grantor died in November of last year in Honey Grove, Mississippi. She was a private woman. She left instructions which I followed." "Who?" Marcus said. Vinson did not answer that, not yet. She laid 3 things on the desk between them. A deed of transfer, drawn up at the Tallahatchie County Courthouse, listing Marcus Lee Holloway as the new owner of a parcel and structure formerly known as Bell South Local Exchange number 4271. A small brass key on a paper tag that read front in pencil. And a Greyhound ticket from Memphis to Greenwood, dated 3 days out. $10, Vinson said. That is the transfer fee. It has been paid. The deed is clear. There are no liens, no back taxes, no second claims. I have done my work. She looked at him then. He could feel it. "I am not a scam, Marcus. I will say that one time because at your age I would assume the same. Take the ticket. Take the key. Go and look at the building. If you do not want it after you have seen it, come back and tell me, and we will speak of other things. But go and see it first." She slid $40 across the desk in 2 $20 bills. "For food, do not lose it." Marcus picked up the ticket. He did not touch the bills yet. He asked the only question he had room for. "What was she to me?" Vinson considered him for a long second. The light through the unopenable window was thin and gray. "That," she said, "is for you to find in the room." The Greyhound rolled into Greenwood at 6:47 in the morning on the 28th. Marcus stepped down with his coat collar up and $40 folded in his shoe. The driver said, "Good luck," without looking up. The bus pulled away. Honey Grove was 7 miles east on Highway 7, then a turn south at a Sunoco station with a hand-painted sign that read Frog Gigs Bait Nightcrawlers. Marcus walked. There was no other way. A man at a gas station in Greenwood had told him no bus ran out that far anymore. Not since '79. The school district had its own van that did not pick up strangers. The road went past cotton fields plowed under but not yet planted. The dirt was the color of dried blood. Marcus had not seen Mississippi soil before that morning. He understood, after the first mile, why his mother had never spoken of it. Cottonwood pollen had come down 2 weeks early. It settled on his shoulders in a yellow dust that did not brush off clean. Redbud was already blooming along the ditch banks, ahead of the magnolia by a month. An AM station out of Greenwood was playing a sermon on a transistor in a passing pickup. The pickup slowed beside him without quite stopping, then went on. The driver had nodded. Marcus had nodded back. By the time he reached the town limit, it was almost 10. Honey Grove was a half-mile of two-story brick on either side of one street, a feed store, a Maddox General sign in faded red on white, a Baptist church with the cross painted but not lit, a post office trailer, and a building set back 50 feet from the road with no sign at all. The building was single-story, red brick darkened by 60 winters. The windows were boarded with plywood that had warped at the corners. The door was a heavy wooden one painted gray with 2 padlocks. One looked new, replaced sometime in the '80s. The other was original bell with the bell and circle stamp still visible under the rust. A small enamel plate above the door, blue and white, read Bell South below it. In smaller letters, Local Exchange 4271. The paint had bled at the corners. Marcus put the small brass key into the new padlock. It turned. He worked the old bell padlock with a piece of wire from his pocket and a patience he had not known he owned. It opened on the 4th try. He pushed the door in. The smell came out before he stepped through: dust, old varnish on pine, a trace of something else underneath, low and herbal, that he would later learn was camphor, kept in cotton sachets pinned inside every drawer. The front room was a small lobby with 2 oak chairs and a counter. The counter had a brass bell on top that was greened with neglect. Behind the counter was a glass partition with a small speaking grill. Behind that, an office with a roll-top desk closed and locked. To the right was a corridor. At the end of the corridor was a door. The door was painted institutional cream. Centered on it was a small enamel sign that read Switchboard Room in raised black letters. Below the knob, a padlock hung from a hasp that had been screwed into the wood with industrial gauge screws. The padlock was the second largest Marcus had ever seen. It had the bell and circle on its face. A tag of stiff cardstock looped through its shank with twine. He came close to read the tag. The handwriting was a careful old woman's cursive in pencil, the pencil sharpened to a fine point. Do not remove without operator authorization, EMH 668. Marcus stood in front of it for a long time. He did not try a key. He did not need to. He could feel from the weight of the lock that no key in his pocket would turn it. He went back to the lobby and sat down on one of the oak chairs. The chair was harder than the floor at Wilkerson's, but it was inside. He pulled his coat tighter and listened to the building. It did not creak. It held very still, as if it were waiting on him. At 11:15 that night, he was still awake. He had not eaten since the bus. He thought about the $40 in his shoe and the locked door at the end of the corridor and the initials on the tag, EMH. He did not know what they stood for. He slept finally a little before dawn, on the lobby floor with his coat for a blanket and his shoe still on his right foot. He woke at 6:30 on the lobby floor and did not know for a moment where he was. The light through the boards was yellow and thin. A mockingbird outside ran through 3 songs and started a 4th. He sat up slowly. He was hungry in a way that had become familiar enough that he no longer measured it. For 2 days after that, Marcus did not leave the building. He went into town once for a can of cold beans and a piece of cornbread from Maddox General. The woman behind the counter had set it in his hand without asking. He had nodded and left. The 3rd morning, he began to look properly. The lobby, the counter, the office behind the glass, roll-top locked, 2 filing cabinets along the back wall, the corridor. Off the corridor, a small kitchen with a hot plate and a chipped enamel sink, a supply closet with a mason jar on the top shelf, and 3 shelves of old phone books neatly stacked, a bathroom with a pull-chain toilet, and at the end of the corridor, the door he could not open. In the lobby, he found the chairs and the bell. He polished the bell with the cuff of his coat until the brass showed through green patina, because there was nothing else to do. It was when he turned to set the bell back down that he saw the plaque. The plaque was screwed into the wall beside the counter at chest height. It was 4 inches by 6, cast in brass. The raised letters had been polished by a hand other than his, many times over many years, until the field around them had worn shallow. He had walked past it twice the day before without seeing it. Some things you have to be still to see. Ella Mae Holloway, operator number 4, 1934 to 1968. Holloway. Marcus read the name twice. He had never seen anyone else carry it. Not in school, not in the house with Wilma. His mother had been a Holloway, and Marcus was a Holloway, and his father had been a Holloway who had died in Chicago when Marcus was 16. That was the entire ledger he had ever been given. He sat down on the oak chair under the plaque and did not move for a quarter of an hour. He walked into town that afternoon. The sky had gone overcast. There was a wind out of the south that smelled of rain coming up from the Yazoo bottoms. Maddox General Store was the only door open. It had a screen with a tier in it patched by red electrical tape. A bell on a leather strap rang when he pushed in. The man behind the counter was tall and thin and very old. He wore a gray cardigan over a white shirt, and his hands rested on the counter the way hands rest when they have done a lifetime of small work. He was 77, and his name was Levander Maddox, and he had run that store since 1962, when his father died. He looked up when Marcus came in. He looked at Marcus's face for 1 second longer than a stranger looks at another stranger. Then he set down the pencil he had been holding. "You, that Holloway boy." Marcus stopped at the candy rack. He had a hand near a roll of Necco wafers, because that was what his mother had bought once when she had $1 left at the end of the week. He did not turn his head. "Sir," Marcus said. Maddox came around the counter with the same slowness the building outside held. He walked past Marcus to the sandwich cooler. He took out a wax paper wrap bologna sandwich and a wax carton of milk and an apple. He set them on the counter. $2, Maddox said, "but you owe me." "Boy, you have $40 in your shoe and a building on the south end with 2 padlocks on it. You have money for the building. You do not have money for the building and the lunch both. Now you owe me $2. You will pay me when there is a thing for you to pay me with. We will not speak of it again." Marcus took the sandwich. Maddox looked at him. "Henrietta Vinson called me a week ago Tuesday. Said she had found you. Said you were on your way. How did you know I was the Holloway boy?" "You have your great-grandmother's mouth." Marcus did not answer. Maddox went back behind the counter. He wrote a number down on the back of a torn paper bag in pencil. He turned the bag and pushed it across. "That number is for the parsonage at New Beulah Baptist. Reverend Pickering is a man you can trust. He will let you use the phone if you ask him plain. He will let you sleep on a cot in the basement if you need to. Tell him Levander said you were the boy." He paused. He held the pencil over the bag a second longer. "There is one other you ought to meet. He lives out on Tutwiler Road past the burn pit. White house, blue door, dog on the porch. His name is Junebug Thomason. He was a Bell South lineman for 43 years. He climbed the poles, he spliced the cable. He sat with my brother at his wake. He knew Ella Mae. He's the only one I know of left who did." Marcus folded the bag in half. He put it in the inside pocket of his coat, opposite the side where the cassette was. 78 last spring. He does not move slow yet. He will know who you are before you finish telling him. Marcus left with the sandwich and the carton and the apple. Maddox watched him through the screen door until he was past the post office trailer and out of sight. Tutwiler Road ran east out of town past a culvert and a stand of pin oaks that had been there longer than the road. The burn pit Maddox had mentioned was a half-acre of black ground where the county had once burned brush before the EPA stopped them in '85. A White House sat a quarter-mile past it on the left. The door was blue. There was a dog on the porch. The dog was a coonhound bitch, gray about the muzzle, who watched Marcus come up the gravel without lifting her head off her paws. Her name was Verily. She did not bark. She knew the difference between strangers who needed barking at and strangers who did not. Junebug Thomason was sitting in a kitchen chair he had carried out onto the porch that morning because the wind had warmed. He was in flannel and overalls and a watch cap. His hands were the wide, blunt hands of a man who had handled cable for half a century. His eyes were a pale gray-brown, the color of creek water in winter. He watched Marcus come up the steps. He waited. "Mr. Thomason," Marcus said. "Mr. Maddox sent me." Junebug nodded. He did not say anything for what Marcus would later judge to be a good 2 minutes by the clock. He looked at Marcus's coat and at his hands and at the way he stood. Then he reached down and pushed an empty kitchen chair forward an inch with the toe of his boot. "Sit, son, you walked from town," Marcus sat. "Ella May's boy, sir. How?" "Mr. Maddox said you knew her." Junebug took his watch cap off and set it on his knee. His hair was white and clipped short. He turned the cap once in his hands and put it back on. "I knew her 41 years. I came home from Korea in 51. They put me on the lineman crew that ran the trunk from Greenwood out through here to Webb and Tutwiler. Ella May was already senior operator on the night board. She had been since 43 when the men went off. They did not put her back when the men came home. She kept the chair. She was that good." He let the dog put her head on his boot. "Your great-grandmother was the best operator on the Yazoo line. She kept that switchboard alive past when Bell wanted it dead. Bell tried to close Honey Grove in 58. She wrote a letter to the regional vice president that put him on his back foot for a year and a half. She drafted it on company message pad paper at the cordboard between calls. She had 3 subscribers and a sheriff sign it before she mailed it. They held the office open until 68. Marcus listened. He had not eaten the apple yet. He had it in his hand. "You did not know about her?" "No, sir, I figured." Junebug looked away, out across his side yard to where a row of pecan trees stood in early leaf. He breathed out through his nose. He had been thinking a long time about what he would say if this day came, and he had decided not to say most of it yet. "I have a key to the front door," he said. "Bell gave one to every union steward in the local from 62 on. I never gave mine back because nobody asked me to. I do not have the key to the switchboard room. Nobody had that key but Ella May. She wore it on a string under her dress until she went into the home in 89. Even then, I do not know where it went. There is a brass key in Mrs. Vinson's office," Marcus said, "I think. Then you let Henrietta bring it. She will when it is time." He stood up. The dog stood up with him. "I will come tomorrow at 8. We will walk the building together. There are rooms in there I have not been in since 71. There is one I have not been in ever. You will not go into that one without me." "No, sir." "You sleeping in the lobby?" "Yes, sir." Junebug went into the house and came back with 2 wool blankets and a paper sack. The sack had biscuits in it and a piece of country ham wrapped in wax paper and a jar of pear preserves with a hand-cut label. "My wife passed in 73. I have not been keeping company since. I cook for one and I cook plain. You take this, you eat tonight, you save the biscuits for breakfast. I will see you at 8. Marcus took the blankets. He did not say thank you because he could feel that thank you was not what was being asked of him. He nodded once. Junebug nodded back. He turned at the bottom of the steps. "Mr. Thomason." "Yes, son." "What did she look like?" Junebug thought about that. Like a woman who knew the names of every voice that ever came across her board, and who never forgot one of them. That is what she looked like. He went inside. The dog went with him. Junebug came at 8 on the dot the next morning in a Ford pickup the color of dried mud. He parked at the curb and got out with a metal lunch pail and a leather key ring on a brass clip. The clip had the Bell and Circle on it. Marcus had been awake since 6. He had washed his face at the kitchen sink with cold water and dried it with a piece of paper towel from the supply closet. He had eaten 1 biscuit and half the country ham and saved the rest. He stood at the front door when the truck pulled up. "Morning, sir." They went in together. Junebug stood inside the lobby with the kind of stillness a man uses in a room he has not been in for a long time. He looked at the bell and at the plaque Marcus had found. He looked at the floor. She used to keep a cigar can of peppermint on that counter for the children that came in with their mothers. The can had a Cuban label on it and she would not throw it out, even after Castro. She gave the last one out in 67 to a Sunday school class on a field trip. I was there. I had cable to splice in the back room and I sat through it because she asked me to. Marcus listened. They walked the corridor together. Junebug opened the small kitchen and the supply closet and the bathroom and the manager's office, which had a key on his ring. The roll-top desk was locked. Junebug said the key for that one was in a mason jar somewhere in the supply closet because Ella May had told him so in 76, but he had never gone looking for it. In the second filing cabinet drawer in the manager's office, behind a folder labeled Supplequisition 1962-1966, Marcus found a slip of yellow paper that had been folded once and folded again. He took it out. It was a postal money order receipt, the carbon copy, dated April 4, 1985, sent to Cynthia Holloway, care of General Delivery, Memphis, Tennessee, Amount $120. The sender line read E.M. Halloway in the kind of careful pencil hand he had seen before on the tag of the padlock. Marcus stood with the slip in his hand and did not say anything for a while. His mother had not lived past April of '85. She had died in the second week of the month. The money order had been sent 6 days before her death. He did not know if she had ever picked it up. He did not know how it had come back. He sat down on the hard wooden chair beside the manager's desk. Junebug came in slowly behind him and looked over his shoulder at the slip. "There will be more," Junebug said. "Where?" "Somewhere only she would think." Marcus folded the slip. He put it inside the cassette wrapper, against the spool, so it would not bend. He sat in the chair another minute. He did not cry. He had not cried since the second week of November, and he did not start now. He had only the feeling, very small and very precise, of something being placed in his hand from a great distance. Junebug waited. Then he said, "We will start with the supply closet. The mason jar she meant is on the top shelf. I can see it from where I am standing." He pointed. Marcus looked up. The jar was there. He had seen it the first day. He had not known to look inside. The county courthouse in Charleston, the seat of Tallahatchie, was a 2-story brick building of 1917 vintage that sat on a square with 3 of its 4 corners taken up by churches. Marcus went there on the morning of the 3rd of March in the truck Junebug drove him in. He carried the deed in a manila folder. He wore Junebug's son's old jacket, which had been pressed. The clerk's office was on the 1st floor, second door on the left. The woman behind the counter was Lula Pell, 54, white, with hair set in tight rolls and a cardigan with a pin shaped like a magnolia. She had worked for the county for 31 years. She had seen every deed that had passed through Tallahatchie in that time. She looked at Marcus's deed for a long minute through her bifocals. She turned the page over and looked at the back. She set it down. "Boy, this deed is in order. But I have got to have your birth certificate, your social security card, and a piece of state-issued photo identification before I can register you as the recorded owner in this office. And I have got to have a current address that is not a hotel room or a Greyhound station." Marcus did not have any of those things on him. His birth certificate had been in his aunt's house. He did not know if it was still there. His social security card had been in his wallet, which had been stolen out of his coat on the 5th of September at the bus station downtown. He did not have a driver's license. He had never owned anything to drive. "Ma'am," he said, "I am not putting any block on this. It is not your fault. You have got to come back with paper. The state of Mississippi has rules about what comes across my counter, and I am the one whose name is on the bottom of the rules. Do you understand me, sons?" "Yes, ma'am." "Where are you staying?" "A church basement, Reverend Pickering, New Beulah." She wrote that down. She did it in the same careful hand he kept seeing now, the hand of women who had been writing things down for other people's lives for 40 years. "I will hold this deed in pending for 30 days. You go and you write to Memphis for a copy of your birth certificate. The state will send you a number for the social security card. The Reverend will sign an affidavit of address. Bring those 3 things and I will record this in 5 minutes. Do not lose this folder." "No, ma'am." She handed it back. Her hands were spotted at the knuckles. She gave him a half-smile that was not friendly but was not cruel either. "Holloway," she said, "Ella May's people." "Yes, ma'am." She had a way of dressing for church that I have not seen since. "Tell the Reverend I said hello." Marcus said he would. He went out through the rotunda. Junebug was waiting at the truck. "Paperwork." "Yes, sir." They drove back to Honey Grove in a quiet that was not unkind. The redbud had come fully out along the bottoms. Carlton Welby came up the gravel walk to the exchange at 2:30 that afternoon. He drove a clean white Ford F-150 with a vanity plate that read WLBY1. He wore a Stetson straw he had not earned and an Oxford shirt with the cuffs rolled twice. He was 54, white, prosperous in the casual way of men who had inherited 200 acres of bottomland and put it into soybeans. He knocked on the front door of the exchange with the knuckle of one finger. "Carlton Welby," he said, putting out his hand. "Welby Farms, I own the parcel just south of yours. Mind if I come in a minute?" Marcus stepped back. Welby came into the lobby. He looked at the plaque without reading it. He looked at the chairs and the counter and at the floor where Marcus had slept. He did not sit. "Son, I will not waste your time. I have been after this building for 11 years. The trust would not sell to me. The trust would not sell to anybody. I drove up here a week after Ella May passed, and I sat across from Henrietta Vinson in her office, and she told me in so many words to go home. Now the trust has given it to you, which is a fine thing, because at long last there is a person standing in this building who can make a decision. He took an envelope out of his jacket. $4,000 cash, today. Sign the bill of sale. I leave you the cash, I take the keys, and you take that bus back to Memphis with money in your pocket. That is a kindness, son. I am the only one going to offer it to you. The next man comes through here will offer less. Marcus did not take the envelope. He looked at Welby. He looked at the brass bell on the counter. He looked at the corridor at the end of which the switchboard room door was still closed. No, sir, son. No, sir, thank you. Welby smiled, the way men of his kind smile when a thing has not gone the way they had assumed it would go, and they are putting it on a list for later. He put the envelope back in his jacket. He tipped the Stetson he had not earned. He went out. The truck started. He drove away south, slowly, the way men drive when they want you to watch them go. The Reverend Eli Pickering of New Beulah Baptist Church was 61, broad-shouldered, with a voice that did not need a microphone. He had pastored New Beulah for 19 years. He had buried Ella Mae Holloway in November of '91. He had not understood at the funeral why Henrietta Vinson came down from Itabena to be at the graveside. No family had been there to mourn. Now he did. He gave Marcus a cot in the basement and a key to the side door. He set out a hot meal on the Wednesday evening, plate covered in foil with a rubber band around it. He let him use the phone in the church office. Marcus called Vinson on the Thursday morning at 9. She picked up on the second ring. You found the building. Yes, ma'am. Sit down, son. He sat in the church secretary's chair. The secretary was at choir practice in the sanctuary above. He could hear the piano through the floor. Vinson explained in the same unraised voice the shape of the thing. The trust was irrevocable. It had been set up in 1973, the year of Marcus's birth. The grantor had been Ella Mae herself. The original corpus had been small. It had grown over 40 years through compound interest on a 30-year bond purchased in '53. It had also grown through a widow's pension from the Sumner sawmill that had paid out for 42 years after her husband's death, and through every dollar Ella Mae had not spent because she did not need to spend it, and through one cash gift in 1978 from a woman in Indiana whose name Vinson could not share. The principal release was conditional. Marcus had to occupy the building for 1 calendar year. He had to use it in some way Ella Mae would have considered a use. At the end of the year, if those conditions were met, the principal would transfer. Then the trust dissolves and the principal goes to the Mississippi NAACP and the Greenwood Public Library in equal halves. You will not be in trouble. You will simply not get it. Those were her terms. Mrs. Vinson, what is in the switchboard room? There was a pause. I have not been in it, she said. She would not let me in. She told me she would not let anyone in. She told me that when you came for it, the key would be ready for you, not before. You have the key. I have a key. Whether it is the key, I do not know. She gave it to me in '89 and asked me to hold it. I did. I will bring it when I come, which I will do at the end of next week. I have a court appearance in Greenville on the 7th that I will not be able to move. Yes, ma'am? Marcus. Ma'am. Do not let Welby buy it. I do not know him in the personal sense, but I know his cousin. I have read the deeds he holds against his tenants in Sunflower County. Do not sell. No, ma'am. He hung up. The piano upstairs went into a hymn he did not recognize. June Bug came every morning at 8 for the next week. He brought, on the second day, a small training switchboard he had kept under a tarp in his shed for 30 years. It was a Western Electric model from 1956, used for training new operators at the regional office, before Bell automated the training pipeline. It had 8 cord pairs, a row of brass jacks numbered 100 through 200, a headset on a cloth-covered cord, and a panel of drop lamps in 2 staggered rows. They set it up on the manager's desk because the switchboard room was still locked. You sit here, Junebug said. Headset on, the mouthpiece is a carbon button. Talk into it close. Loud is not the same as clear. You say things plain. Marcus put the headset on. This is a cord pair. Red plug, black plug. The red is the answer plug, the black is the calling plug. A subscriber lifts his receiver, his drop falls. The lamp lights. You see the lamp, you take the red plug, you ring the jack with the lit lamp. You say number, please. He gives you the number he wants. You ring his number to confirm. Then you take the black plug. You find the jack of the number he wants. You push the black plug in. You throw the key forward to ring. He picks up. You throw it back to talk. They are on the line. You do not listen. You watch the lamps. Marcus did it. He missed the first time. He plugged into a jack 2 rows down. Junebug did not say it was wrong. He said, try again. Marcus tried again. He got it. Why do you not listen? Pardon. Why do you not listen to the call once you have plugged them through? Junebug had been waiting for that question for 58 years. He took the watch cap off his head. Because if you listened, you knew. You knew who was calling whose wife at midnight. You knew who was telling the bank he could pay the note next week when he could not. You knew who was crying because her boy was sick again. You would have to live in this town with those people. The job depended on you not listening. The job also depended on you hearing. He set the cap back down. What does that mean? It means there were times when you had to hear without listening. When you had to know without knowing. There were operators who saved lives by hearing. There were operators who broke them by listening. Ella May knew the difference. She did not teach it to anybody because she did not believe a person could be taught it. She believed you came to it on your own, or you did not. Marcus worked the board for 2 hours that morning. He learned to take a long-distance request, which meant play his trunk call through Greenwood and waiting for the line to come back. He learned the lamps that meant emergency. He learned the way to throw the key smoothly so the click did not come across to the subscriber. He learned to ring 3 short pulses for the Honey Grove party line that had served 11 houses on Old Money Road from 42 to 63. When he stopped, his right shoulder was sore from the angle. His hand had a faint groove across the meat of the thumb from the plug shank. Junebug watched him stand up and stretch. She would have been proud. Marcus did not answer. He did not know yet how to answer a thing like that. He took the headset off and laid it on the cradle. He looked at the brass jacks numbered 100 through 200. He thought about the wall of jacks behind the locked door at the end of the corridor. Those went from 100 to 475. He had not yet seen them. Mr. Thomason, yes, son. How many calls did she place in 34 years? You could not count them. Try, Junebug thought. Average 80 an hour on a slow day, 240 on a Saturday night before church. 6 days a week, 10-hour shifts, 34 years. He did not give the number. He let Marcus do the math. Marcus did the math. Most of those, Junebug said, were lonely people. The other ones knew they were not alone. That was the trade. She held a line. That is what an operator does. I have got to say this part the way it happened, because my old voice is the one that knows it. I am telling you, the boy did not believe me, not yet. He sat at that training board with his shoulders pulled in, the way a boy sits who has been waiting all his life for the chair to be pulled out from under him. He worked the chord pairs. He learned the lamps. He did the math on her 34 years, and I saw his hand go still on the desk when he got the number. He did not say it out loud. I did not ask him to. I had worked that line 43 years. I had spliced the trunk cable from Greenwood to Sumner 3 times, once in 58, once after the tornado in 73, once after the ice in 81. I knew what was in that room, or I thought I did. I thought what was in there was a desk and a chair and a wall of brass jacks and a stack of message pad paper she had not used. The night before we got the key, I dreamed of her hand turning the latch from the inside. I woke at 4:15. I did not sleep again. I made coffee. I sat on the porch with Verily until the sun came up over the pecan trees. You will see in a minute why. Marcus was alone in the building on the Saturday morning when he opened the supply log. The log was in the bottom drawer of the roll-top desk. Junebug had opened that desk the day before. He had used a small flat key, found in a mason jar on the top shelf of the supply closet, where he had said it would be. The desk had not held what they had hoped. It had held 46 years of supply requisitions, 3 pencil sharpeners, a bottle of dried-up script ink, and the log. The log was a hardback Bell South ledger, the kind with a green canvas cover and red corners. It went from January 1960 to December 1968. Ella May's hand was on every page. Marcus opened it to 1964. The pages were neat as a clean ledger should be. In pencil, the columns ruled with a straight edge. Most of the entries were ordinary: a request for replacement cord pairs on the 15th of March, a note about a faulty drop lamp on April 2nd, a trunk line outage on the 11th of May, restored at 4:45 p.m. He turned to June. Most of June was ordinary too, except for one line. June 21, 1964. Call number B3127, Holly Springs to Lafayette, Indiana, July 19 min, note C jar. The pencil had been pressed harder on that entry than the others. The note was underlined twice. Marcus stared at it. He went to the supply closet. The mason jar on the top shelf, the same jar that had held the desk key, also held two other things. A small canvas bag of brass shoe-tack nails, and at the bottom, wrapped in a square of soft red flannel that had been worn to a velvet, a single brass operator's jack with the number 314 stamped on its side. He took the jack out of the flannel and held it in his palm. It was smaller than he had expected, about 2 inches long. The shank was worn shiny from a great many years of being held by the same hand. The numerals were stamped, not engraved, and the brass had a faint patina of green at the very base, where sweat had reached it. Marcus did not know what the jack meant. He went to the porch and waited for Junebug, who came at noon. He handed Junebug the jack without saying anything. Junebug took it. He turned it once. He laid it in the flat of his hand and looked at it, for what Marcus would later think was the longest he had ever seen a person look at an object. He did not say anything. Mr. Thomason. You read the log? Yes, sir. You read June 21st? Yes, sir. Junebug closed his fingers around the jack. He sat down on the oak chair. He had not sat down in the lobby before. He had stood every time. I am going to need a minute, he said. Marcus gave him the minute. When Junebug spoke, his voice was the voice he had used when he had told Marcus what a switchboard operator did and did not do. This is the jack she pulled that night. She kept it when they changed the equipment in '65. I knew she had it. I did not know it was in that jar. I had not been in that jar in 31 years. He set the jack back in Marcus's palm. He closed Marcus's fingers over it. Wear it. There is a leather thong in the supply closet on the second shelf. Wear it under your shirt. Do not show it to anyone for a while. Why? Because Carlton Welby will know what it is when he sees it. There is one more thing waiting in that room that we will not understand until we know why she pulled it. You will know on the day Henrietta brings the key. Not before. By the second weekend of March, Junebug and Marcus had tried 6 keys against the switchboard padlock. The first 3 were keys from Junebug's Union Steward ring. The 4th was a key the Reverend Pickering had found in his church office desk. It had belonged, by way of a long lineage, to the deacon who had been Ella May's neighbor on Bynum Street from 1950 to 58. The 5th was a key Maddox had produced from a tin behind his cash register, which he believed was a spare bell padlock key from '61, though he could not prove it. The 6th was a key Marcus had found in a coat pocket of an old jacket left in the switchboard manager's closet on a paper tag marked test key in pencil. None of them fit. The padlock was a Bell South Plea 7 manufactured by Yale in '58, used for switchroom security between '58 and '68. Junebug knew it because he had cut one off a defunct office in Charleston in '72, when Bell had finally let him decommission the building. Junebug also knew that the shank of the padlock had been sealed with lead at the time of the office's closing in 1968. The lead seal was still there. He showed to Marcus that bead, right at the joint of the shackle and the body. That is a Bell lead. It means an inspector certified the office decommissioned. Once that seal is on, the lock is supposed to stay on until the building is demolished. Bell does not key these once they are sealed. There is no master. Then she had the key, yes, and she put the seal on after. After, with a kit she should not have had, she kept that lock the way you keep a wedding ring, son. She closed it on something only she thought ought to stay closed. The key is wherever she put it, and it is not in this building. Where then? Junebug stood at the door. He put his palm flat on the wood. Somewhere only she would think. That is what I told you, and that is what I keep telling you, because that is what she would have told both of us if she were standing here. Mrs. Vinson. Yes, Mrs. Vinson in '89. You think Mrs. Vinson has the key. I think Ella May gave it to her. I think she gave it to her because she trusted her not to use it. I think she told her not to bring it until you came. And I think the day Henrietta drives up here with an envelope, that is the day we open this door. Not before. Marcus put his palm on the wood next to Junebug's. The wood was cool. There was no draft from under the door. The seal was good. He stood there a long time. Junebug did not move. The afternoon light through the lobby boards made a thin yellow line across the corridor floor that crept toward the door at the rate of about an inch an hour. When they finally went outside, Junebug locked the front door with the brass key. Marcus put his hand inside his shirt and felt the brass jack on its leather thong against his sternum, warm now from his body and not from anyone else's. Henrietta Vinson drove up from Itabena in a tan Oldsmobile on the morning of Friday, the 13th of March, in a fine rain. She parked at the curb. She came up the gravel walk in low heels and a wool coat. She had a brown leather satchel that Marcus had now seen twice. From it she took a small white envelope with his name typed on the front in capital letters. Marcus opened the envelope on the porch with Junebug standing on his right and Vinson standing on his left. Inside were two things: a single sheet of paper folded once on which Ella Mae Holloway had written, in pencil in her careful hand, "For the boy, when he is ready, EMH," and a small brass key 2 inches long with a square head and a single ward on a paper tag that read SR. Marcus held the key in his palm. He did not move toward the door. Junebug did not move either. Vinson took one step back because this was not her room and she knew it. Marcus stood in the rain. He did not open it that day. They opened the door on the morning of Saturday, the 14th of March, with the rain stopped and the ground still soft. Junebug was on Marcus's right. The Reverend Eli Pickering had come at Marcus's asking and stood on his left, in his shirt sleeves, with his hat in his hand. Marcus put the small brass key into the padlock. It did not turn at first. The lock had not been worked in 24 years, and the wards had gone stiff with rust, and the lead seal at the shackle resisted the shift. Junebug took a can of 3-in-1 oil from his lunch pail and put 1 drop into the keyway, the way a man does who has opened 1,000 locks that did not want to open. Marcus tried again. The key turned. The shackle lifted, the lead seal cracked and fell to the floor in 2 halves. Pickering bent and picked them up without being asked. He held them. They were the kind of thing a person ought not to leave on a floor. Marcus took the padlock off the hasp. He stood there with it in his hand. "Go on, son," Junebug said. "She left it for you, not for me." Marcus pushed the door in. The room had not been entered since the 6th of June, 1968. The air that came out was dry and close and smelled of brass polish gone to powder, and of pine, and of the camphor that was pinned in every drawer of the building. There was a single window, boarded, and a line of gray light came through the gap where the plywood had warped. The light fell across the floor and up the face of the board. The board filled the far wall. It was a cord switchboard, 10 feet of it with the operator's chair set before it on a worn rubber mat. The face of the board was a field of brass jacks in rows, numbered 100 at the top left to 475 at the bottom right. Below the jacks were the cord shelves, the pairs coiled and clipped where she had left them. The headset hung on its hook to the right of the chair. A Western Electric headset, the cloth on the cord frayed soft. On the desk beside the chair sat a cigar box. It was a Hava Tampa box, the cardboard gone soft at the corners, and across the lid in pencil, in the hand Marcus now knew the way he knew his own, were 2 words: Marcus Lee. He had not told anyone in Honey Grove his middle name. It was on the deed in Vinson's papers where a stranger could have read it. But the pencil on the box had not been written by a stranger, and it had not been written that month. The pencil was old. The graphite had silvered with age. Marcus sat down in the operator's chair. It was the first time in his life he had ever sat in a chair that had been put there for him. He opened the box. On top was a photograph, black and white, scalloped at the edges. A young woman at the board, this same board, in a dress with a white collar, her hand on a cord, her chin lifted toward the lamps. The back read in pencil, EMH, Operator, 1936. Below it, a wedding photograph, a man in a board suit, and the same woman, younger, not yet at the board. Below that, a boy of about a year, fat-cheeked, in a christening gown on a quilt. The back read, Otis, 1948. Then a stack of letters tied with kitchen string. Then a sheaf of yellow call slips, 11 of them pinned together at the corner with a single brass shoe-tack nail, the same nails Marcus had found in the mason jar. The top slip read in the careful pencil, June 21, 1964, B3127. He did not read the rest yet. And under all of it, a thick envelope, sealed, with writing across the front. For Marcus Lee, when you find the room. Marcus held it for a moment. Junebug had come to the doorway but had not crossed it. Pickering stood behind him. Neither man spoke. Marcus broke the seal. He read it out loud, because it felt wrong to read it to himself in a room that had held its breath for 24 years. Marcus, if you are reading this, you found the room, and that means you are the one. I will not write the long way around it. I am your great-grandmother. Your father Otis was my grandson. His father, my son, was Otis too. I buried that first Otis in 1953 when the sawmill at Sumner came down on his shift. I have not said his name out loud since the day they lowered him. You did not know about me. That is my doing, not yours. I want you to understand that before you understand anything else. I worked this board 34 years. I started in 1934 for $11 a week. The company did not want a colored woman on the nightline. They kept me because there was no one else who would sit the hours I sat. I learned every voice in this county. I learned which ones were lying and which ones were drowning. I learned to hear a thing without listening to it, which is the only honest way to do this work, and no soul ever taught it to me. In 1964, on the night of June the 21st, a call came through from Holly Springs. A young man, scared, talking fast. He needed to reach a farm in Indiana before morning. 2 of his people were being hunted, and the farm was where they could go. The trunk to Memphis was clean. But the inspector had a man on the Indianapolis line that week, listening for exactly that kind of call. So I held it. I patched it by hand through a maintenance pair that did not log. I kept it open 19 minutes. The next morning, the inspector asked me about a delay on the board, and I told him the storm had taken a trunk down at Webb. There was no storm. I have never told that lie to anyone since. I have never once been sorry for it. One of the 2 they saved was a girl from Lafayette, Indiana. In 1978, she found me. She was grown by then with money of her own. She sat in my kitchen and put an envelope on my table and would not take it back. I did not want it for myself. I put it where it would grow. I put it where it would one day reach a Holloway who needed it. I did not know yet that the Holloway would be you. I found your mother in '81. I sent what I could by money order, in my initials, so she would not feel beholden to a stranger. When she passed, I lost the thread of you for 6 years. I am sorry it took me so long. An old woman in a home does not move the way she wants to. I stopped speaking in 1972. People said it was a stroke. It was not. After my Otis went, after Loretta wrote me the letter she wrote, there were words I had put into this board for 38 years that would not come back out of me clean. I had to stop talking so I could hear what was still in there. Some of it never left. Some of it never will. There is a thing I should have told your daddy in '83, but the letter ended there. Marcus turned the page over. The back was blank. He turned to the next sheet in the envelope. It was blank too. She had stopped mid-sentence and she had not gone back, and there was no way now to know whether she had meant to and forgotten, or whether she had meant not to. Marcus set the letter down on the desk. He did not make a sound for a while. His shoulders went, the way a young man's shoulders go when he has held them a long time against a thing and the thing finally arrives. He did not wipe his face. He let it be on his face. Junebug came into the room then. He crossed the threshold he had not crossed in his life. He put one wide hand on Marcus's shoulder and left it there. He did not pat. He did not rub. He let the weight of the hand say the thing. Some things are between an operator and her line, Junebug said. That was all he said. Marcus reached up under the collar of his flannel shirt and drew out the brass jack number 314 on its leather thong. He looked at it now in the light of the room it had come from. He understood it now. It was the jack she had pulled on the night of June the 21st, 1964. It had carried 19 minutes of a stranger's fear across 400 miles of wire all the way to a farm in Indiana. She had kept it against her chest for 27 years. Now it was against his He held it in his fist and did not let go of it for a long time. The night of June the 21st, 1964 had been close and still in Honey Grove. It was the kind of Delta night, when the heat does not lift after dark, but only thickens. Ella Mae Holloway was 57 years old that summer, alone at the night board, the only operator on after 10. The call came in at 11 minutes past 11. The drop fell on Jack 314, the Holly Springs trunk. She took the red plug and answered. The voice was a young man's, and it was running ahead of itself. She knew before he finished his first sentence that he was not calling about anything ordinary. He gave her a number in Lafayette, Indiana. He said it twice, fast, the way a person says a thing he is afraid he will not get to say again. Ella Mae knew the board the way a pianist knows the keys in the dark. To place the call clean, she would route it through the Memphis trunk, then up the long-distance lines to Indianapolis, then down to the Lafayette office. That was the way it would be logged. That was the way the inspector's man, sitting on the Indianapolis line that week, would hear it cross. She did not place it clean. There was a maintenance pair on the board, a spare circuit kept for testing, that did not register on the traffic log. She had used it twice in 30 years, Both times for reasons she had told no one. She took the black plug. She patched the Holly Springs voice through the maintenance pair, up a path that no log would show. She sat with her hand on the key and held the circuit open by hand. A handheld circuit cannot be timed by a machine. She held it 19 minutes. She did not listen. She watched the lamp. She kept her eyes on the lamp and her hand on the key. She let two voices she would never meet say to each other whatever two people say when one of them is arranging in the dark to keep the other one alive. When the lamp went dark, she pulled the plug and coiled the cord. She made no entry in the traffic log. She made one entry, in pencil, in a book she would lock in a desk for the rest of her life. See jar. In the morning the inspector asked her about the gap. She told him a trunk had gone down at Webb in the storm. There had been no storm. The sky over Honey Grove that night had been clear enough to count the stars by. Ella Mae Holloway had counted them on the walk home at 1:30 in the morning. She had not told a living soul what she had done. She had carried Jack 314 against her chest for 27 years. Now it hung against the chest of the boy she had built everything for, in the room where she had done it. When he could speak, he asked the question that the letter had only half answered. The girl from Indiana, Marcus said. The one who put the envelope on her table. Mrs. Vinson said there was a gift in '78, from a woman whose name she could not share. That is the same woman, Junebug said. She saved her, and the woman came back and gave her the money, and the money grew into the thing that found me. Yes, she did not know it would be me. No, she did the thing because it was the thing to do. The rest of it found its own way home. That is how it works, son, when it works at all, which is not often. Marcus looked at the wall of Jacks, 100 to 475. He thought about the photograph of the young woman with her chin lifted toward the lamps. He thought about the boy in the christening gown who would grow up to be his grandfather, who would die under a sawmill before Marcus's own father was old enough to remember his face. He thought about 3 generations of Holloways who had been buried without him knowing their names. And he thought about the money order receipt in the cassette wrapper against his heart. The one sent to his mother 6 days before she died, that she may or may not ever have held. There is one more thing, Junebug said. You ought to know it from me and not from a paper. Marcus waited. Your father knew about her, Otis Jr. He knew she was up here. He came down once in '83 on the bus the same as you. He sat in that lobby for 2 hours. He did not come into this room. He did not stay the night. He went back to Chicago, and he wrote her one letter after, and that was the last she heard from him. What did the letter say? I do not know. She never told me. She put it somewhere, I expect. Somewhere only she would think. Marcus looked at the desk and the box and the wall of Jacks and did not go looking for it. Not that day. Maybe not ever. Some things a man leaves where they were left. Carlton Welby came back on the Tuesday. He did not knock with one knuckle this time. He stood at the open front door, because Marcus had taken the boards off the front windows that week, and the building had begun to look like a place where someone lived. Welby had his hands in his pockets. He had left the Stetson in the truck. They tell me you opened the room, Welby said. Yes, sir. And you are keeping it? Yes, sir. Welby looked past Marcus, down the corridor to the door that stood open now at the end of it. He could see the edge of the board from where he stood, the brass catching the light. He looked at it for a while. Then he looked at Marcus, and at the leather thong at his collar, and at the small brass thing that hung from it. That was hers, Welby said. It was not a question. Marcus did not answer. He did not need to. I sat across from her once, Welby said, 1984. Before the home. I came to make her an offer on the building, and she would not speak to me on account of she did not speak to anyone by then. She wrote on a pad. She wrote 3 words and turned the pad around and showed me, and then she went back to her chair by the window. I have thought about those 3 words for a long time. He did not say what they were. He took his hands out of his pockets. He looked for one moment like a man who had wanted a thing for 11 years and had just not understood fully that he had wanted the wrong thing. The right thing had never once been for sale. The look passed. He did not apologize. Men of his kind do not, and Marcus did not expect it, and the lack of it did not take anything from the morning. You will need power run out here and a permit and a roof man before next winter, Welby said. When you do, you call Dwight Sumrall in Webb and you tell him I sent you. He will not cheat you with my name on it. He turned and went back to his truck. He did not drive away slow this time to be watched. He just left. That was the last time Carlton Welby came up the gravel walk. He and Marcus would nod to each other for 30 years, at the Sunoco, at the funeral home across the square in Charleston. They never spoke again of the building. There are reconciliations that happen in full with words and tears, and there are the other kind. The kind that happen in a single nod held 1 second too long. The second kind are more common. They hold. On the Thursday, Junebug helped Marcus splice a line back into the manager's office, off the trunk that still ran live to web. They worked an hour. Junebug's hands remembered the cable the way the old remember the words to a hymn they have not sung in years. When it was done, Marcus lifted the receiver and heard, for the first time in that building, a dial tone. He called Ita Bena. Henrietta Vinson picked up on the second ring. "It is Marcus," he said. "I opened the room. I am keeping the building. I do not know yet what I will use it for, but I will use it for something, and I will be here a year and longer." There was a silence on the line. When Vinson spoke, the unraised voice had something new under it. "Welcome home, son." Marcus stayed in the switchboard room that night, alone. He did not sleep on the floor of the lobby. He brought the wool blankets down the corridor and made a bed at the foot of the board. Before he lay down, he took the cassette out of his coat. Mahalia Jackson, side 1, the spool with the 2 bite marks. He set it on the seat of the operator's chair. His great-grandmother had sat there 34 years. Her hands had pulled Jack 314 on a June night to carry a stranger's life across the wire. He did not play it. He was not ready. He thought he might be ready someday. He left it on the chair and lay down and slept the first full night he had slept since the second Tuesday of November. The exchange came back to life slowly. Over the spring of 1993, Marcus had the roof patched by Dwight Sumrall, who did not cheat him. He had power run from the pole on Highway 7. He filed with the Reverend Pickering co-signing as a community sponsor for a low-power FM broadcast license, the kind the federal government had begun to grant to small towns that could prove a use. Junebug helped him study for the operator's exam. They sat at the manager's desk in the evenings, the old lineman and the young man, working through the rules of the spectrum, the way they had worked through the rules of the chord board. Marcus passed the exam in May. It was a Saturday in June, 1 year almost to the night. Ella May had held a call open 19 minutes. The Honey Grove Community Voice went on the air. 89.5 on the FM dial. The first broadcast was the Sunday service from New Beulah Baptist, carried live. The Reverend Pickering's voice went out over the cotton. It reached the houses too far up the back roads for their old people to drive in. The switchboard room Marcus did not change. He cleaned it. He oiled the chair. He put the photographs back in the cigar box and the box back on the desk. He mounted the brass jack, number 314, on a small block of cypress on the wall beside the board under a hand-lettered card that read only, "She held the line." He wore the jack on its thong on Sundays. The other days it hung on the cypress where the town could see it. Henrietta Vinson drove up for the first broadcast. She was 68 that summer, and she cut the ribbon across the front door with a pair of sewing scissors because no one had thought to bring the large kind. Saunder Maddox closed stores for the morning, which he had not done since his father's funeral, and brought Tooted biscuits in a basket with a cloth over them. Reverend Pickering said a blessing over the building, and over the boy, and over the woman whose name was on the brass plaque by the counter. Marcus stood in the back and let them have it. He had learned that year that there are gifts a person receives by stepping back and letting other people be glad. The cotton came up green in the fields to the north that summer, the last year anyone planted them. 30 years went by the way 30 years do. It was the fall of 2023. Marcus Holloway was 49. The Honey Grove Community Voice had been on the air for 30 years. 89.5, 10,000 watts now. Gospel on Sunday mornings, the school lunch menu and the obituaries on weekday noons. A youth news hour on Thursday afternoons, read by high school students who came in after class. They learned at the same cordboard desk to hear a thing without only listening to it. The fields to the north of the building were no longer cotton. Marcus had bought the 40 acres from the Welby estate after Carlton passed in 2009, and he had let it go back to hardwood, oak and sweet gum and cypress in the low places. The barred owls had come back to it within 5 years. On fall evenings they called to one another across the dark of it, and the sound carried in the open window of the switchboard room the way a voice carries on a clear line. Junebug Thomason had died in 2007 at 92 in his sleep in the White House with the blue door. Marcus had buried him in the New Bivula churchyard, in the row where Ella May lay, by Junebug's own asking. The coonhound Verily had been the third of that name by then, and the fourth one slept now on Marcus's own porch. Reverend Pickering had gone in 2015. Lavander Maddox in 2019, at the store, in the chair behind the counter, the way he had said he wanted to. The store was his youngest daughter's now. She still patched the screen door with red electrical tape, because that was how it had always been, and a thing that works does not need changing. Henrietta Vinson was 98 that fall. She still lived in Itabena. She still signed her name to documents in her own hand. Slow now but sure, she still would not retire. The work was not done, she said, and a person did not quit work that was not done. The trust had done what Ella May built it to do, and then it had done more. When the principal came to Marcus in 1993, it was $283,000 and some odd cents. 40 years of a widow's patience turned into a number. Marcus did not keep it for himself. He spent what the building needed and put the rest back to work the way she had taught him by example. He set up a fund and he tamed it for her, the Ella May Holloway Operator Trust. The fund did one thing. It paid the filing fees and the equipment costs for small black towns across the Delta that wanted a radio voice of their own and could not afford the start. Over 30 years it stood up 9 stations. Mound Bayou got one in 97. Glen Allen, Drew, Rolling Fork, Chula, a town outside Yazoo City so small it shared a post office with the next one over. Each station was run by the people who lived there. Each one carried its own gospel and its own dead and its own school lunch menu. None of them carried Marcus's name. He had asked that they not. He had learned from a woman he never met that the deepest kind of giving is the kind that does not sign its work. Marcus had married, late a school teacher named Adele from over in Greenwood, and they had one son. They had named him Otis. Otis Holloway was 19 that fall, home from his first months at the State University in Buffalo, New York, where the cold was a different kind of cold than the Delta had ever taught him. He had come home for Thanksgiving. He wore that week the brass jack on its leather thong because Marcus had given it to him to wear when he went north, and the boy had taken to it and kept it. On the Friday after the holiday, Marcus took his son into the switchboard room. The board was as Ella May had left it. The chair, the headset on its hook, the cigar box was on the desk. The photographs inside had gone soft with handling now. Marcus had taken them out 100 times across 30 years and shown them to the young people who came through the station and asked who the woman was. Otis sat in the operator's chair. He had sat in it before as a child. He sat in it differently now. "Tell me about the call again," Otis said. "The 19 minutes. So Marcus told him. He told it the way Junebug had told it to him. Plainly, without raising his voice. The storm at Webb that never happened. The maintenance pair that did not log. The girl from Lafayette's, it came back 14 years later with an envelope she would not take back. He told it the way you tell a thing you want a boy to carry after you are gone. When he finished, Otis turned the brass jack over in his fingers. "Did she ever tell you?" Otis said. "What she didn't tell your daddy in '83, the thing the letter stopped on." Marcus looked at the blank wall above the board for a moment. "No," he said, and I stopped asking. There came a point where I understood she had stopped the sentence on purpose, the way she stopped speaking on purpose. Some things she meant to keep. I decided to let her keep them. A person is allowed to take a thing with her, even from the ones she loved. Otis nodded. He was 19, and he did not fully understand it yet, but he had the kind of face that would understand it later, and Marcus was content with later. That evening Marcus walked out alone into the hardwood to the north, where the cotton had been, in the last light. The redbud was long past for the year, and the sweet gum had gone red, and the owls had not started up yet. He put his hand into the pocket of his flannel shirt out of an old habit. The habit of 35 years. The habit of a boy who had carried one thing in that pocket, because he had nothing else. The pocket was empty. The cassette was where it had been since the spring of 1992. On the seat of the operator's chair, in the switchboard room, behind the board where his great-grandmother had held the line. Mahalia Jackson, side 1, the spool with the 2 bite marks from his mother's pencil. He had never played it. He was 50 soon. He thought sometimes that he would play it before he died, and he thought other times that he would not, that some songs are kept better unplayed, the way some sentences are kept better unfinished. He did not know which it would be. He had made his peace with not knowing. He thought Otis might play it someday, after, and he thought that would be all right. He thought it might even be the better way. He stood in the hardwood until the first owl called. Behind him, across the dark field that was a field no longer, a light burned. It was in the high window of the radio booth where a student was running the evening hour. A girl of 16, reading the names of the week's dead into a microphone. She read them so the old people up the back roads, the ones who could not drive in anymore, would hear them said aloud, so they would know that someone in town had thought their people worth the saying. A voice that holds the line is a kind of love no one writes songs about, but it carries 40 years. Thank you for listening this far, until the end of the story. But there's something I keep thinking about, something that keeps coming back to that cassette tape he never played. There's one his mother owned, and throughout the story, he always carries it in his jacket pocket, and in the end, 30 years later, it's still sitting on that chair, unplayed. I wrote it like that and then sat with it for a while, because I think most of us carry something like that. A voicemail we never delete. A door we never knock on. We tell ourselves we'll do it. Sometimes not doing it is a form of self-preservation. I don't know if Marcus ever played it. I leave that question open because my own answer changes from day to day.